What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Thompson 2. Today I'm going to be filming part 2 of the manual swap. Since I spoke with you last, I had pulled off the exhaust, the heat shield, and the drive shaft. Started to pull off the drive shaft, but I didn't have the tool that I needed. We went to Advanced Auto and got the 16mm wrench that we needed to get the drive shaft nuts off. Since then I've gotten quite a bit done, so I'm going to show you what I have gotten done and inform you on what you will need to get the drive shaft and subframe and the automatic transmission out. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and show you the location of where the drive shaft is and, well, where it would be if you have it in your vehicle. I'll show you where the guibo on the drive shaft hooks up, and then I'll get out from under the car and show you where the bell housing bolts for the automatic transmission are. I have gotten the drive shaft off, the subframe is taken off, and the automatic transmission is fully out now. So let's get to that. So as I was saying, for your drive shaft, the rear of your drive shaft will be hooked into place by these 4 bolts, or these 4 holes, and a bolt. On the back side of it, you will have a 16mm nut that needs to come off. On the front side, I believe it's 16mm as well. You'll need to hold one side with a wrench, and the other side with another wrench, and turn opposite directions to get it off. Up here is where your guibo will attach to. You'll have a 1/2-inch nut that connects to each of these studs. In the middle of your drive shaft will drop down. And then you'll move up to the front and start disconnecting your shifter linkage, which is also a 1/2-inch nut, your oil coolant lines. Some people say that these have to be cut off and take the transmission out. As you can see, they do not. This is a 3/4 fitting on the oil coolant lines, so go ahead and screw that all the way off. This one was incredibly hard to get to because of the placement. It's on the side of the automatic transmission. What I did was I took the subframe off, which connects to these holes on both sides. I took the subframe off with having a jack under the transmission. You don't want to take them off without having a jack under it. So I took the subframe off, lowered the transmission quite a bit so that I would have access to this fitting more easily. And after that, after you have your oil coolant lines, your shifter linkage, and your O2 sensor here, not O2 sensor, sorry. Well, one of these is O2 sensor. The other one runs to your transmission computer, I believe, which is in the engine bay. Don't quote me on that one. I haven't gotten to tracing these lines down and seeing which one's which yet. When I do, I'll let you know. But one of them, I'm assuming this one, this bigger plug in my hand right now, I'm assuming that that one is the transmission computer line, and assuming that this one is the O2 sensors. But that's all that you have to take off of the transmission. In part 1, I showed you the cross member here that I took off momentarily so that I could slide the exhaust out. It's a 16mm on both of the nuts. I dropped that down so that the transmission would come out. And other than that, I had started taking the bell housing bolts off for the transmission. My vehicle is a 97, so I did not have to take off the intake manifold for the starter bolts. If you have a BMW before year 96, so 95 and down, you will have to take off the intake manifold to get to the starter bolts, because your starter is non-threaded. So you actually have two bolts on both sides. Well, not two bolts on both sides. You have one bolt and a nut on the other side. So you'll have to gain access to the nut on the front side of the transmission so that you can take it off. But if you have 96 and up, you can just access the bolt from the rear side of the transmission by fishing around 3-foot extension all the way from the tail of the transmission, which would be right here. Take a 3-foot extension all the way down to your starter bolts. I'm going to go ahead and get to showing you where the bolts are on the transmission. I have the transmission out of the car and beside it. I figured it would be easier to show you guys the location of the bolts, because I couldn't find anything on YouTube or any pictures of it or anything. It's kind of more just fishing in the dark to find the bolts. So let's get to that. Get out from under the car. Over here we have the automatic transmission. It's quite a bit longer than the manual transmission that's going to be going in. Right here is where the front of your drive shaft will attach to. You'll have 3 bolts. Those 3 will come off. You can leave these other 3 on. That connects this piece to the transmission itself. Right here is the O2 sensor plug. I believe this is O2 sensor plug. Like I said, don't quote me on that one. Right here, as I said, is the transmission harness plug for that, and then all the way on this side of the transmission is your oil coolant spot. That's where that's where your oil coolant line will plug into, and this oil coolant spot is either the in or the out. I'm not sure. On the front side of the transmission, I'm gonna have to turn the camera sideways to get a shot of this one, is your other oil coolant line. They're both on the left side of the transmission if you're under the car and looking at it. And now to where your bolts are on the bell housing. So we're going to look at the back of it, from the back of the transmission to the front. So if you're under the car using your 3.5-foot extension, which I'll show you how mine was set up. This is what I use to get the bell housing bolts off. Here I have a 3/8 inch to 1/2 inch adapter with a 1/2 inch 10 inch extension that connects to another 1/2 inch to 3 inch adapter, and then another 10 inch 3/8 extension, one more 10 inch 3/8 extension with a 6 inch extension on the end of it. And the bell housing sockets, or the sockets that you will need to take out the bell housing bolts, are an E10, E12, and an E16. This set is available at Advanced Auto. It's just a gear wrench set that you can get for around 70 bucks. The boxes. Oh. The box for that. It's got just about everything you'll need. That has hex and Torx bits, So now that you see all the sockets that you'll need, how many extensions, or how long of an extension, I'll show you where the actual bolts mount to the engine. Okay, on the top of your transmission, you're going to have, from the starter, this the starter location, you'll have 2 bolts here and 2 more on the top, which are non-starter bolts. One small, I believe it's a 10mm bolt here that holds the adapter plate that will be in between the engine and the transmission, and you'll access this bolt from the front of the transmission. That's the only bolt that you'll access from the front. And then there's one more on the bottom of the right side of the transmission. And then we'll move to the left side. There's one below the starter, next to the starter spot on your transmission. One below that one, and then 2 on the very bottom. So in total you should have these bolts taken out on the ground over here. You'll have 2 E16s, 3 E10s, and then 2 E12s. Correction, sorry, 4 E16s, just 2 of them are different lengths. And then, like I said, you'll have a 10mm bolt that is accessed from the front. So far, since the last update, that's all that I've gotten done. The automatic transmission is out, like I said. Now I'm going to start taking out the brake pedal assembly, the shifter from the interior, and then once those 2 things are out, I'm ready to start putting in all the manual swap parts. Once I get the shifter and the brake pedal assembly out, I'll make another update and try to explain that as well as I can. Alright guys, so I left off with letting you know that I was going to start taking out the brake pedal assembly and the shifter unit inside of the interior of the car. So I've gotten that stuff removed, and now I'm going to show you how I did it. There's multiple ways to go upon getting the shift lever itself out. I had a problem with mine because I referred to the handbook or manual that I have for my vehicle, and the shifter I have myself did not match up to the one that is in the handbook. It didn't have a securing screw for the shift knob, so I ended up just cutting the shift knob off with a box cutter and started taking off all the plugs and connectors manually. I'm going to start with getting under the driver's side and showing you how to take the brake pedal assembly off. Let me get my flashlight out. Alright. So, in order to get the brake pedal assembly off, you will need to take off those 4 nuts, the nuts that surround the brake booster connector. I don't know what that thing's called. So there's 4 nuts that come off. The brake booster has a clip on the end that comes off, and then you can just release the brake pedal from that U-joint right there. So you take those 4 nuts off, release the pedal from the brake booster, take that plug right there off, that one, if you can see it. There is 1 nut that goes into that hole right behind the plug up there. Let me see if I can get it right here. There's one nut, which all 5 of those, the one I just pointed at, and the 4 that the brake pedal assembly actually connects to, are all 1/2 inch. So you only need 1 socket. You may need an extension so that you can actually get access to the bolts with ease. So the brake pedal assembly, this right here, there's 4 nuts. That is where all of those connect to, and then that goes there, and your connector goes to there. So that was pretty simple. Now for the shift lever, it's easiest if you put your key in your car and you get the shift lever to actually move. I'll pull this up here. Alright, so that obviously goes inside of there. I already have it removed, as I said. Here is the style of shift lever that I have. Usually there's a long shift lever like right there in the manual. Usually looks like that. But as you can see, I do not have the long shift lever. It's just the one piece with the button. So I ended up cutting off the exterior of it. The exterior was cut off. Actually, yeah. Anyways, you get the gist. To cut that part off. Pulled that off. Since I'm not actually like repairing anything in the shifting unit, I'm just taking everything out so that I can start putting manual pieces in. I just took out the 3 bolts that actually hold this unit itself to the chassis of the car. Other than that, to get access to this area and to be able to work with ease, you're going to want to take out your dash pieces. You'll take that out, and then your where's that? Your computer piece right there. Pull this so you know what I'm talking about. You'll take that piece out, and then the smaller console piece. Disconnect all the wiring from it and everything. If you don't know what the wiring goes to, it'd be a good idea to mark it so that you don't forget. With this piece right here, as I said, I just disconnected the 3 main pieces that hold it in, and then there is your shift linkage that runs. I'll show you the hole that it goes through to the bottom of the car here in a moment. This piece feeds down inside there to the underbody of the chassis, and this piece will be threaded through here. That nut to get this off is a 18mm. You just loosen it, and then the cable will slide right out of there, and the shift linkage goes through that hole. And once you get it off of the actual shift unit itself, it can just be pulled right up through there. And then that's about it. The shift linkage connects to that little pin. There's a piece that you have to take off. Just flip it upside down and push it down. That will come off. It's pretty self-explanatory once you look at it. Then I just weaseled this shift unit itself all the way out of there. I didn't take any of the trim off because the clips on the underside of this tend to break. I will not be getting a new plastic piece for the actual manual. I'm just going to create a shift boot myself. So that's going to be about the end of this video. I can't really do much more today. I have everything out that needs to come out for the automatic side of the car. I'm pretty soon going to start putting all the manual pieces in. I'm going to start with the brake pedal assembly and the lines for the brake reservoir, master cylinder, and slave cylinder to the transmission. After that, I will assemble the transmission outside of the vehicle. By that I mean I will put the shifter and everything on the transmission and mock up everything that I need to mock up before the transmission actually goes in, and that will be in part 3. So this is going to be the ending for part 2 of the video. In this part 2 we have covered how to take the drive shaft off, what parts of the guibo come off on the drive shaft. We have covered taking the subframe off and where all of the bell housing bolts are, oil coolant lines, O2 sensor plugs, transmission harness plugs, taking the brake pedal assembly off, and disassembling the shift unit. If you have any questions or anything, go ahead and leave a comment. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in part 3. Thank you.